Burn my damn finger.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
You remember when you was only 2 years old?
No,
You came into my life.
I don't.
Okay, who left the toilet running?
And many more. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's me once again, your friend, Podcast Peaks, Justin Meat Peaks for short. But let's get into it. I'm running a little behind. Technical difficulties caught me up, and I wasn't able to get on when I had originally planned to. Let me spin my mic around just a little bit. I like the way this looks so much better. Anyway, welcome to another episode of Make It Make Sense. Once again, I am your host, Justin Meat Peaks, a.k.a. Podcast Peaks, and I want to make sure we are having a wonderful evening this fine Sunday on 10/10/21. So let's get into it. If you are hip and if you are paying attention and if you follow my social medias and all those other fun things that I am using to make sure that I am reaching out to you, tonight's episode is brought to you by Dad Tales, Parenting versus Parenthood. And I'm not trying to tell you how to raise your kids, but just hear me out. So let's jump right into it. As we all know, I talk a lot about, well, I haven't talked as much as I should have. So let's get to that. If you've read my description and if you read anything about this podcast, then you know that I am a father. I have 4 wonderful children, 3 boys and a daughter. 3 of my children are from a previous relationship. And, of course, my oldest child is also the child of that previous relationship, but he is my stepson. Break it down for you guys. I have a soon-to-be 18-year-old. I have an 11-year-old. I have a 7-year-old. And I have a soon-to-be 4-year-old, the 4-year-old being my daughter, who, as I put in one of my descriptions somewhere, that I have more to say than my 4-year-old daughter. And trust me, between her and her brother of 7, they talk a shit ton. So when I say I have a lot to say comparative to them, oof, man, you have no idea. So I put it in my post or I put it in my titles. But to be honest, I realized that I haven't talked a lot about being a dad. I mean, I know I've touched on it like in different aspects and different parts of some of my previous podcasts, but I figured that this podcast would solely be dedicated to parenting, more specifically, you know, my role as my experience as a father. And I don't have a lot of dad jokes, so that's why I avoided putting dad jokes as one of the topics. I'm just going to tell you my story as a dad, as a father. So I 100% love my kids, and I'm not saying that because I'm being recorded or that there's a possible, judge waiting for me to stand before him and say, Your Honor, I deserve to have my... No, that's not the case. For those of you who know me personally, you know that my kids are my absolute favorite people in the world. They are my world. They stress me out to no end because they are exactly like me. But I would do anything for my kids. I would do anything for my children, and that is the bottom line. So getting into that, I want to talk about just my experience overall with kids. And I feel like I have a funny story with each one of my kids, but I can't say for sure that I'm going to give you all the proper details. So we're going to start with the oldest to the youngest, and just kind of go by like just dad tales. Now, I will warn you, I'm going to warn you now that some of these stories are going to be graphic in nature in the sense of like toilet humor and things of that nature. I'm going to go into as much detail as possible about my experiences during these times. So if you at all feel uncomfortable with like, a story about, diapers and things of that nature, then you might want to just like kind of turn down at this point the volume. Don't leave. Just turn the volume down. So with that being said, let's jump into it. But before I jump into my dad tales, I have some pretty amazing news that I kind of want to share. Nah, I'm lying. I definitely want to share it. So here's to me, first and foremost. Um, I am super excited to say that as I've been going through this process of becoming not a YouTuber, jeez, but going through this process of becoming podcast personality and trying to get my podcast off the ground and trying to reach as many people as possible. Um, I've had the luxury of being able to navigate this whole thing and make this, this whole not dad, but this whole podcast thing work in my favor. So I am very excited and very happy to announce that through some rigorous mouse clickings and just copying and pasting, this podcast can now officially be found on Google Podcasts, Podbean, of course, where I'm at today, Amazon Music Audible, and also on iHeartRadio. So, yay, right? I know, like super exciting. Again, if you're out there listening, I thank you guys so much for putting up with me for these last few episodes. I really, really, really appreciate you guys. But no, like super exciting. My podcast is now on Podbean, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. I put a bid in, or not a bid, but I put a request in for Pandora Music, which I'm working on getting my hands on that. So hopefully you'll find my podcast on Pandora Music as well. And then most likely after this podcast, because I feel confident in myself to continue this journey, I'll soon reach out to Spotify. So then that way I'll have it on Spotify. I'm currently working on Apple Music as well. So hopefully by the next time we guys get together and next time you guys hear from me, I will officially be on Apple Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Pandora, and iHeartRadio. So right now, if you're listening, I am on iHeartRadio, I am on Amazon, I am on Podbean, and I am on Google Podcasts. And of course, I'm very thankful for all those different entities for carrying my podcast when they truly, truly, truly didn't have to. So yeah. So before, I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew that. I'm super excited, super happy to be here on those different platforms. So we're going to keep this party going. But anyway, back to my dad tales. So starting with the oldest child. I'm not going to give the names of my children simply because I just feel like it's not necessary. So we're going to go with the eldest. Or we can refer to him as the 17-year-old or the 18-year-old, whichever one. So he was my first experience with, having to take on the responsibility of parenting. Now, let's be clear. After these stories, I'm going to go into the differences between parenting and parenthood. But he was my first experience with parenting. And, I met him and his mother when he was around 2 years old. So he was just like, he was like I love him to death. And if he ever hears this, I want you to know that this was not like a shot at you or to make you feel like loved less or anything like that. But essentially, he was his mom's luggage. Like he was his mom's baggage. Because in relationships, we all have baggage. At the time, her baggage, quote unquote, just happened to be that she had a child. Now, mind you, when I met her and I met him, I was like still in college. I was still young, and it wasn't in me to like play stepdad. Like it wasn't something I was looking to do. Like I was still young. I was like, trying to live my life. Truth be told, I was just trying to like get in and get out and move on with my life. But, I found myself in a substantially long relationship with her, and such relationship led to me parenting my oldest son. So that's where I really learned the difference between parenthood and parenting. People talk about how much it takes to be a parent or how much it takes to raise kids, and I'll be honest with you, those are two different things. Being a parent takes a miscount on your stroke and not pulling out quick enough or intentionally not pulling out in order to impregnate a woman. That's what it takes to be a parent. It literally takes
I mean, sorry guys, to tell you the truth, it takes that 30 seconds that you're good for. That's all it takes is 30 seconds. But parenting or raising a child, that in itself, that's a 24/7 commitment, and there's no end in sight. So I'm gonna get more into that after this. But so story number one. Let's see what my favorite story is. I think I have two. I think I have two stories that are like considered my favorite. But they're not really my favorite because like there were these moments where I'm like, oh, it's so great to be a stepdad or it's so great to parent. No, these were moments where I'm like, what in the absolute fuck? So the first moment was when my eldest was, what was he, about 3? It was around somewhere between 3 and 4. I want to say it's about 3 or 4. Maybe even still been 2, but I'm gonna go somewhere between 2 and 4. And he was, for those of you who don't have children, you won't relate to this, or maybe you will. But he was constipated. He was experiencing constipation. He hadn't pooped in probably like, I don't know, like maybe a day or two. I don't know. It was some number that didn't actually make sense. It was like he hadn't pooped in a while. So I don't know if it was directed from a doctor or a family member, but his mom decided, you know what, I'm just going to give him a laxative. And I want to say it was like a liquid laxative, or maybe it was, whatever. It doesn't matter. So we go through the process, giving him a laxative, and it's like, all right, cool. Here's a laxative. Maybe everything will work out after that. It's like, all right, cool. It'll just work its way out, and we'll be done, right? This is my first experience with laxatives. Like I personally never taken them, so I didn't know what to expect. When I tell you this little boy laid down for like a nap, just like a nap, just, in his sleep. And then he woke up and he was like, doing a little crying, like, and I'm thinking like, oh, it's that I woke up from my nap. I'm still tired and groggy. Like I'm still tired and groggy. Does this, should I still be awake or should I still be asleep kind of thing? Whatever. And I'm like, all right, let me get up and go check on him. And mind you, it was like a small apartment that we were living in. It was a 2-bedroom apartment, very small, like little to no hallway. It was literally like, here's the living room, here's like a closet, and at the end of that closet is a bathroom, and then on opposite sides are bedrooms. So I walk into this, into his room, and I feel like the smell of the diaper was sitting in around the corner waiting to beat my ass. Because when I hit that corner, and I tell you, I smelt what I smelt, I said, Jesus, keep me near the cross. The smell that came out of this child was intense. I said, what in the absolute hell? Now, again, mind you, this is my first experience with, parenting, really, and more so with giving anybody, child or adult, a laxative. So my child had a laxative, and he finally went to the bathroom. Now, here's where the fun stuff comes in. First and foremost, being an adult male, not even male, just being an adult, period. It never, ever, ever really dawned upon me that we as human beings can use the bathroom in our sleep. Specifically, the one that I'm referring to right now. It never really dawned upon me that you could crap yourself in your sleep. Like, yeah, we do it as, like, babies do it and all this, but it never really actually set in my mind. So I'm like, how the hell did you do this, but you slept through it? Like, you didn't wake up, like, in the mid push, you didn't wake up. It just happened in your pants and you didn't wake up. So I'm like, holy crap, it stinks in here. So I go to check his diaper or whatever. This is where the story gets kind of graphic. The story gets kind of graphic here. So I go to check his diaper to see, like, what am I working with here? Like, what exactly am I dealing with? And no pun intended, but I shit you not, the inside of this child's diaper looked like they were filming a scene from the Lord of the Rings and they had just got into Mordor, meaning there was a fucking tower in the middle, and then everything around it was wasteland. It was the nastiest shit I have ever seen come out of a human being, let alone a child. It was disgusting. Like, he blew his entire, whatever he was holding in for a few days, all came out. It was gross. And I call his mom, like, what in the absolute hell am I supposed to do with this? Like, how am I supposed to clean this? Like, do I just throw him in the shower? Do I throw him in the trash? Like, what do I do? So, it was rough. She wasn't around. She was at work. I was there by myself. I'm like, holy shit. Like, is this what it means to be a parent? Like, oh my God. Like, this is what raising a kid is like? This is the worst experience ever. And I mean, we got through it, obviously. And, from that point on, I was like, never again will I give a child a laxative, because I feel like that was pure evil, but I don't know for who, for him or for me. So it was not fun. It was not fun at all. So my second favorite memory or experience with him, God, there's so many because he's so old. I can't really think of a good one. You know what? I can't say exactly what. I got a good one. My favorite parenting moment with my oldest child, it came in the form of me witnessing him get to a point in life where he was able to throw zingers or jokes back at his mom. Like, she would say something and he would say something not smart, like not in a disrespectful way, but he would make a joke in regards or in a rebuttal to what she was saying, and it was hilarious. Like, it was that moment where I'm like, oh shit, he's not a kid anymore, and it's kind of funny as hell to watch your kid like make a joke in response to what you say as an adult. Now, of course, he doesn't do it that often with me, because I always have to give him that dad stare, like, don't you joke with me, I'll kick your ass. But he's actually pretty damn funny at times. So those are my two moments where parenting really set in for me as far as like raising a child. And that's literally, my first experience with parenting. Now, again, all this ties into what I'm going to say, after this. But then came many years later, then came the opportunity for me to actually experience parenthood, which was, essentially the birth of my first child. Mind you, this child, my 18-year-old or my 17-year-old, he's my stepson. So following him was my firstborn child, which is my 11-year-old. And he came into the world. And I'll never forget the story that I have about him comes from before he actually came into the world, was just, during the pregnancy process. I remember his mom going to the doctor, and I forget what, I want to say they did not CAT scan, but they did like a sonogram or whatever. And the doctor had said like where his brain was developing, or where, his brain would have been developing, where there was like a foggy area, like a dark space. And they went on to tell us how like it's something that can go away, but if it doesn't go away, then he could potentially have Down syndrome and all these things like that. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying for me as a father, a first-time father. Not a first-time dad, because at this point I've already been a dad. But as a first-time father, hearing that your son, your firstborn child, may be born with not a defect, but not the way that you expect him to be born. It's scary as shit. Like, it's super scary. And I remember trying to tell her it's going to be okay, and trying to get her to understand that there's nothing that we can do about it. It's just something we have to wait out and see what happens. And thank God that he came out absolutely healthy with no issues or no developing problems. He just came out the way he was supposed to come out. But it was terrifying. It was so scary to hear that my son would be this. And it's not scared because I didn't want a kid with Down syndrome or I didn't want a kid who wasn't properly developed. No, it was terrifying because I didn't know how to parent that child. Having been a parent, or at least having been parenting prior to him, I already had this whole, I got this game plan. I already know how to do this. Like, I'm on point. I've already experienced, Mordor diapers. I've already experienced, just all type. I experienced my child eating the RCA cords to his TV and trying to explain to me why he ate it. And he was like 7. I'm like, why the hell did you eat the cords to your TV? Like, how are you supposed to watch your DVDs now? You ate the cord. Like, what the actual hell? So I was terrified. I was terrified of what to do. I was terrified of how it was going to look. And, once he came out, it was absolutely fine. And then I fell asleep on the couch with him on my chest, and I'm pretty sure he rolled off my belly and fell on the floor. And I picked him up immediately, though. It's just like food that falls on the ground. You pick it up within a few seconds. It's totally okay. Just, kiss it up to God. Wipe the dirt off, kiss it up to God. So my 11-year-old definitely gave me my first parenthood scare. But thankfully and gratefully, he came out fine, and he is 100% me. He is my clone. He is everything that I am. My favorite picture of me and him together was when he was a baby, like, still fresh out the womb, still smelled like hospital. And I fell asleep on the couch holding him, and my hand is like, sitting on, like, you sit there and you kind of rest your hand on your brow or right above your eyebrows, and you just kind of sit there. And I fell asleep like that with him on my chest. In the picture, he's knocked out on me, and his hand, I want to say it's the exact same hand in the exact same spot. So he's, not even sure who he is or that I'm his dad. Yes, I'm his dad. DNA test proves it. But just sitting there in the exact same position, both knocked out on the couch. And I want to say for sure that it is one of my favorite, absolute favorite memories of me and my 11-year-old. It's my favorite picture. I keep it on my phone. It's the one picture I'll never get rid of because it is literally me and my son sleep on my chest in the exact same position. So my oldest son gave me my first experience with parenting. My second son and my firstborn gave me my first real scare and, just really reality check with parenthood. But then came the 7-year-old. The 7-year-old, I assure you, I am a middle child. So if we're thinking logically, just, from fruit of my loins type of situation, my 7-year-old is a middle child based on the fact that, my firstborn is my first child. He's my second child. And then of course there's my youngest, if I don't count the oldest, but nonetheless, the 7-year-old literally came out the womb, like, ready to fuck shit up and wreak havoc. Like, he was out of control, but not like bad. Like, he's not violent. He's not like aggressive. He's not one of those kids where I had to whoop on a constant basis. He was just wild. And he still is wild. And the crazy part is, like, he's a definite kid where, like, you yell at him and he's still smiling at you, even though he knows you're upset and he knows he did something wrong. He can't help but smile. And he always keeps this goofy smile on his face, and he's always had that smile on his face. But he was like my daredevil baby. Like, he was going up the steps at a much younger age than his brothers were, like crawling and stuff like that. He was all over the place. And he's still very much all over the place. But he was my combination of parenthood and parenting, of just trying to figure out what the hell did I just give birth to? Not me personally, obviously, but what the hell did I just bring into this world? And how do I raise it? I'm happy to say that he's a phenomenal child. He is a phenomenal child. Just actually thinking about it makes me want to tear up a little bit. Of my children, my oldest two fight a lot with each other and with their siblings. And that's mostly because there's a huge age difference. My kids are real spread out. Once again, I have a 17-year-old going on 18. I have an 11-year-old, I have a 7-year-old, and I have about to be 4-year-old. So as you can tell, There's a huge gap as far as age is concerned. It works out well in the long run, but there's a huge age gap with my children. So my older two, they grew up like BFFs. They grew up right underneath each other. But then as the years went on, and that significant age difference started to play a role, they became more buttheads towards each other, and they're mean, and they're picking on each other, and it's always leave me alone. Boys being boys, fighting with each other. But my 7-year-old, he's a crybaby. He's a brat. He's a liar. Like, he says his brothers did stuff. Like, and it's not even like he's lying on them to get them in trouble. It's one of them things where it's like, I'm yelling, like you guys hear it in the beginning of my podcast and my intro music. It's like I'm yelling like, who left the toilet running or something like that. And with not having any clue as to who did it or any information whatsoever, he's just like, he did it. And I'm like, how do you even know that? I don't know. And it's like, stop saying stuff you don't really know what's happening. So he's one of those kids where he's just like, shut up. Like, just stop saying something. You're not making the situation better. Just shut up. And he's like, I'm just trying to say what. I'm like, ah. But I always bring him up, and again, no, they will tell you that you shouldn't compare your children, or you shouldn't let your children know that you have favorites and so forth. And they're like, shut the fuck up. You don't know. But I don't make my children know I have favorites. But I have to point out on a number of occasions that my son, the 7-year-old, is more compassionate, more loving, and more forgiving than any of his siblings, maybe except for the baby. Because he wants to hug you, he wants to love you, he'll forgive you, he wants to be around you. He'll be crying that you yelled at him or were mean to him 5 minutes ago, but then he'll come back around and he wants to give you a hug. So my 7-year-old, again, I literally am feeling emotional thinking about it, but my 7-year-old is every bit of compassion that I wish I had in me. I am not nearly as forgiving and nearly as kind as he is. And I tell my kids all the time, like, you need to learn from your brother, because out of all of you, he is the kindest one. So I love him with all my heart. He stresses me out, and he talks a mile a minute and just, doesn't know how to shut up. But when I talk about my kids, and the one that teaches me that love truly is unconditional and truly is forgiving, it's him. So I'm trying not to cry, because that's actually really a beautiful thing, and I love him so much for that, and I hope and I pray that he remains that person for the rest of his life. So anyway, but he's still crazy. He still drives me nuts. And last but not least, in last place, but far from last place, is my daughter. My daughter is 3. She'll be turning 4 in this upcoming month. And she is wild. She's wild. I knew what it was like to have boy versions of myself, but the female version of myself, holy shit. I don't even know if I could deal with her. I can't even understand any man that's gonna be able to put up with her. She's crazy, but that is my baby girl, and I love her so much, and she loves her daddy. I see why they say, daughter softens a man's heart, because she is my heart. I do love her wholeheartedly. I love her so much, and this is the story that I have about her. I love her so much that I did something for my daughter that I never did for any of my other children, and it is 100% gross, and it is 100% like ew, and I still don't understand why I thought that this was a resolution for helping her, or that it was even normal. So, for those of you who have children, y'all know that blue Q-tip suction cup looking thing that you put in your kid's nose to get snot out, that little thing right there that make that noise. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know what that shit's called. I have no idea. I have 4 kids, and I have no idea what the technical term or the actual name for that damn thing is. But anyway, when it came to her, I never really wanted to use that shit because I didn't want to put that in my poor baby's nose, and I didn't want to get all in there, and I didn't want to, make her feel uncomfortable, which this is going to be totally opposite of making her feel uncomfortable, but I didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable, so I didn't like to use it. So I did something extremely gross in retrospect to actually using the the freaking suction cup thing. I would hold my daughter's head, and I would place my mouth on one of her nostrils, and I would blow up into her nose, which the air would force through her nostrils, like go through her nasal cavity, come back out the other side, pushing out every bit of mucus and snot that was all like, if she was congested, like it's like, and it all comes shooting out the other nostril. Again, I warned you guys this shit was gonna be gross, but it comes shooting out the nostril, and I can promise you that no matter how you do it, you almost cannot prevent her snot from shooting onto your face. It's almost impossible to avoid, especially when they start to like whip their head and fight away from it. So again, totally gross. But I never did that for any of my other kids. And again, you're judging me. I don't care. I did it for my daughter. And I'll be honest with you, as a father who has parented 3 kids raised 3 kids prior to her, 2 of which came from my own loins. I can tell you right now, it was the most effective way to get her congestion, like to clear her nose. Like, she hates that shit. I still try to do it to her to this day, and she fucking hates it. But it works. Like, it truly, truly works. Like, you blow her nose out, it comes out, it's free and clear, and then she can breathe again. She hates it, and, you know, it's whatever, but that shit worked. I wish I'd have did that to my boys, because then I wouldn't have had as much trouble with them with the congestion. So, say what you want. That shit actually works. You can judge me if you want to, but yeah, it was definitely an effective route to get out the mucus from her nose. So, whatever. But anyway, so those are just some of my dad tales, or just some of the things that I did or experienced with, you know, being a dad, which leads me to the next topic of parenting versus parenthood. Now, I say this more recently now, but I realized that over the years, and there's a clear, distinct difference between, you know, being a parent and actually parenting or raising children. To be a parent, like I pointed out at the beginning of this podcast, to be a parent, it just takes, you know, some bad timing on your part during sex or some intentional actions taken in order to conceive a child. So once you conceive a child, whether by accident or by intention, you, by definition, have become a parent, which you have entered into parenthood. But as we all know, not all people who enter into parenthood are fit to be parents or aren't, you know, good parents. And that's not because they weren't good parents or they weren't fit to be parents, because they lack the physical or natural abilities to actually conceive a child. We define good parents or, you know, absent parents by their parenting. So there's a difference between parenthood and parenting. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I can say, being a father of 3 who I have acquired through parenthood, and a father of 1 who I am parenting, I know there's a very big and very contrast difference between the two. And a lot of what I talked about in my last podcast about these trends and these things that kids are doing in today's society with the TikToks and the different challenges and, you know, just going out there and doing all these ridiculous things because someone said, hey, this is a challenge, you should do it. These children, in my opinion, my honest and my sole opinion, is that these children are subjective to these things or are finding themselves doing these things because they have parents, but they're not being parented. They're not being properly raised. Like, again, I'm not going to sit here and act like I have all the answers for parents out there, because I don't. I don't have all the answers because I am still learning myself and I'm still growing. But I do know what it's like to have 2 parents who raise you, and then I know what it's like to also be in a single parent household, because my parents got divorced at one point, and neither one stopped parenting me simply because we didn't live together anymore. So I know what it's like to see parents not be there for the children, to miss out on that parenting point, but also I know what it's like to be parented and still have someone in your corner and in your, you know, in your ear, you know, telling you what you need to hear or telling what you don't want to hear, so that you can, you know, make the decisions for yourselves or make things happen so that you're not out here in these streets looking ridiculous and crazy and stupid. So I say this a lot. Like, on both sides of the coin, there's a difference between a father and a dad, and on the other side of the coin, you can be a good mother, but a bad mom. Which most people say, oh, isn't it the same thing? Actually, it's not. I actually looked up the definitions of both mom, dad, father, mother, things like that, just to kind of, to to make sure that I'm saying things that to align with what the reality is. And to be a father or a mother, you had to have conceived or helped conceive or help produce an offspring, which again, if you're out there and you have the parts and they're functioning, to enter into parenthood, it doesn't take a whole lot to enter into parenthood. But parenting is a lifelong commitment with no end, no days off, and it is 100% dedicated to the raising and the upbringing of that said child. Now, and it's not necessarily that said child, because again, there are those of us out there who have parented children who don't actually belong to us, in the sense of we did not acquire them through parenthood. I myself, as I've said before in the past, if you've ever listened to my previous podcast, I work in education. So I work with a bunch of children who are not my children. But I tell them on a regular basis that I treat them like my children, meaning that I did not acquire them through parenthood, but I am parenting them no differently than I would parent my own children. Now, it's not my job description to be a parent to these children, but I do realize that a lot of these children have parents but are not being parented. And that's why we have such a decline in society, and where we have this downfall where people aren't as good or as they're not living up to their full potential because they have parents. But a lot of these parents would rather be their best friends or their friends rather than their parents. I tell my children all the time, I am not your friend, but I am not your enemy as well. So when we break it down to parenthood versus parenting, it's a lifetime commitment. I have kids who have no biological relation to me whatsoever, and not even a what's the word? I'm looking for a big word, but I can't figure out what right it is. But they don't even have a relationship to me through courting of a parent. Like, it's not like another stepson, stepdaughter kind of situation. But I have children in my life who 100% look to me as a parent, as a dad, because they want parents who parent them. They don't just want a parent who brought them into this world. They want parents to parent them. And so I do what I do because I'm good at parenting. I'm not great. I'm not perfect. But I am good at it. And therefore, I carry that with me into everything that I do, especially when it comes to children. Because there's a huge difference between the two, and the world is sorely lacking in parenting versus parenthood. We have all these parents out here so committed to doing their own thing that they forget to take care of the thing that isn't a thing. It's a human being. It's a living person, someone who lives and breathes life into this world. You're so committed and so distracted by these inanimate and these meaningless and these material things that you forget about the one thing that truly, truly needs you and needs you to guide it. So with that, I encourage you or discourage you from entering into parenthood if you're not prepared to parent. And again, not perfect. I'm not Dr. Phil in this bitch. I'm not no type of professional. I have no degrees that solidify my point. This is my opinion. This is my show, and I'm going to say what I want. And you don't have to like it. But if you're not going to like it, and you can take that somewhere else. But if you disagree with what I'm saying, by all means, this is why I go live, because there's a chat room here, and I'm all for a conversation. I even have the ability to invite those in the chat room into this phone call to have a good discussion with me, because again, I'm not afraid to talk about what I feel, and I'm not afraid to say how I feel about these things, but I'm I'm standing on my own experiences and I'm speaking from there. And that leads me into this last part of our podcast, which is I'm not telling you how to raise your kids, but just hear me out. If you have children, remember that child is not their father or their mother. A lot of us out here, and I say us because, again, I'm not perfect, but a lot of us out here tend to treat that child as if they are the adult that helped conceive them. When you say things like, you just like your daddy or you just like your mama, that in itself is scarring in a way that does not easily heal. It creates a relationship with you and that child where how you interact with them, how you raise them, how you discipline them, how you love them, how you support them is going to be not solely, but severely skewed based on a relationship with that child's parent. If I hate the mother of my children, the things that I do to my children are going to be driven by hate. And it's not hate for the children, it's hate for the mother. So for instance, if I hate the mother of my children, so I decide to keep my children away from their mother. Now, some of us might say that's a good thing if she's a bad mother. But what if she's a good mother, just a bad parent? See, a mother or a father can love their child unconditionally, can provide for their child, can do the things necessary for their child that a mother or father would do. But to be a parent, there's a level of sacrifice that comes with parenting that they don't tell you about. So that is the thing. If I'm hating the mother of my children, and she's not a bad anything, I just hate her, and I keep my kids from her, what relationship am I building with them? Am I building a relationship with them that says that their dad is someone who can't separate what his responsibilities are as a parent to provide his children with the love and support that they need on all sides? Or is he just a parent who is only out for his own selfish gains or only gets focused about what's best for him or what he wants? Because then if I keep my kids away from their mother, then what relationship will they have growing up where their mother was never around or they were never allowed to see their mother? So now they have these different dysfunctions that they carry into their adult relationships with people, all because I hated their mother. I didn't teach them hate. I didn't teach them hate. I didn't teach them dislike, and I didn't teach dysfunction. But because of my choices, now they have these things. So this is why I say parenting is different than parenthood. It's easy to conceive a child. It's easy to become a parent. It's not easy to parent. So it's two different things. And people need to understand that. So again, I'm not telling you how to raise your kids, but what are you doing? Is it for you? Is it for your children? And I know there's some confusion out there where people think, well, I'm a good this or I'm a good that. No one's actually trying to question good or bad. It's a matter of just time at this point. You know, I say this all the time. My kids are never going to care about how much money I spend. You know, they don't care about the things that I bought them, but they are concerned with the time that I spent on them. So things that are bought have no comparison or no value to the things that are spent, if that makes sense. So my kids get all my time, not all my money. They get all my time. Now, trust me, as a father who is tired, on a rare occasion, I tell my kids, back up. Daddy needs some space. Like every parent. And that's not to say that I don't love my children 24/7. I do. Sometimes daddy needs a break. After you change a diaper from Mordor, you tell me what you want to do. You want to cuddle up with your little Timmy, your little Jane. You want to cuddle up with them? Those are like really terrible names I just came up with. But anyway, it's tough out here. But I'm not telling you how to raise your kids. But you know, we have to do better as people. And this goes out to a lot of parents that I really wish, you know, the parents of my kids at school would listen to this. And I've had to explain this. And this is a huge problem, especially in the African American community. I'm going to say this out loud. I'm not telling you how to raise your kids, but will y'all stop teaching that bullshit about if they mess with you or if they touch you, you got every right to hit them? Shut that shit up, please, for the love of hip hop. Shut that shit up. Because I'm going to tell you right now, from my experience, every parent out there who is teaching that bullshit, teaching that, well, they ain't allowed to touch my kids. If my kids get touched, they know what it is. They better handle it. That's how good it all sounds good until your child is the one who touched another person's child who was bigger and badder, and they were taught the same damn lesson. Now your child done got their ass whooped because that parent taught the same shit you was teaching, but you ain't teach your kid how to fight. You ain't teach your kid how to de-escalate a situation. You ain't teach your kid self-control or how to properly manage themselves when they find themselves in situations where they're upset or they're angry. Y'all so busy out here trying to teach these kids to put their hands on other people's kids, and none of them got hands. None of them got hands. They ain't got hands. They ain't seen hands. They ain't used hands. But you out there telling somebody put their hands on you. You better put your hands back. You got to teach them how to use the hands if you're going to teach that bullshit. And then after the first time they get their ass whipped, then you need to tell them, all right, maybe you need to try some new tactics. Have you tried getting the teacher? Or have you tried walking away? I just need y'all to do better when it comes to y'all kids. Because, shit, I'm the one in the schools dealing with them and putting up with their shit. And I'll be honest with you, I just had this conversation the other day. Right now, being in education is hard. Being in education is hard. A lot of parents talk shit about teachers and say this and that, but being in education is hard. We are not your child's punching bags. All because you so concerned about doing what you want to do, you ain't raising your child. So now your child come up into school acting a damn fool. And I love this part. I love when I call parents and say that your child did this or your child did that. I don't believe that. My child would never. They're not learning that at home. I don't know. They must be learning that at school. Ma'am, I can promise you that when I was in ELA today, I did not hear the teacher saying, okay, class, we're gonna discuss how to properly use the term bitch. I don't remember that. I remember walking into math class and hearing the math teacher talking about, does anyone know the square root of these hoes need to shut the fuck up? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to need y'all to stop blaming people for your child's behavior as if though you had nothing to do with it. Because that's the kicker. That's the real kicker. Ma'am, if your child didn't learn that at home, and it sure as hell didn't learn it at the school, my question is, where is your child at? Who is your child with? How do you not know what your child is being exposed to? Because you say they with you 24/7. Well, shit, that's not true because they with us 7 to 8 hours a day. So you ain't even got the full 24. So, are they staying at a cousin's house until you pick them up? Because I promise you, we are not teaching that in the schools. So I'm not trying to tell you how to raise your kids, but y'all need to step up to the plate. Stop expecting us to do all the damn work for you. This shit's not easy. This shit's not fun, but here we are doing it because it's what we love to do. So, again, parenthood versus parenting. And I ain't trying to tell you how to raise your kids, but just hear me out. If you focus just a little less on yourself, a little less on what you wearing to the club tonight, a little less on climbing that corporate ladder, and mind you, let me be very specific, let me be very clear. A lot of what I'm saying is going to be geared towards my people of color, because that's the people that I relate to the most, and I know what is going on. But trust and believe, this is the one time that your privilege does not excuse you from this fucking conversation. White, black, yellow, green, indifferent or not. If you have children and you have any intention to parent them, and I don't mean just conceive, and if you have any intention to stick the fuck around, and make sure they become decent human beings, God damn it, you got to stop worrying so much about yourself. You got to stop worrying so much about yourself. You got to learn to sacrifice for your children. There's a difference between sacrificing and providing. I promise you that. So you have to learn that this is not just about you anymore. You got to do what's right for them. So I don't know what else to tell y'all. But other than that, I want to thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me ramble on for a few minutes about what I think is important. And I'm just trying to make it make sense. I'm just trying to understand how y'all thought it was okay to parent, to be parents, but not parents. That blows my mind. Make it make sense. Explain to me how that worked. How that worked for you, Did you not have a parent around to parent you? I don't know. What do I know? I'm just a father of 4, trying to do the best that I can raising my children. So I'm just speaking from experience and speaking from the heart. But once again, I want to thank you guys for being here. As I stated earlier on in the podcast, for those of you who just now joined me here on Podbean, I want to reiterate that I am now officially on Google Podcasts. I'm officially on Amazon Music and iHeartRadio, and I'm currently in the works for attaining permissions to be on Pandora, Spotify, and then Apple Podcasts. So I'm trying to expand, guys. I'm really trying to expand. And as I told y'all in the introductory episode, if you stick with me for 5 episodes, which this is episode number 5, and if you feel like you're enjoying the show and I'm saying some stuff that you like to hear, then please, I implore you to subscribe, to follow, to save, to share all this lovely podcast with your friends and family. Now, because the more the merrier. I want people to be out here. So, again, much love and appreciation for you guys. I am your host, Justin Meat Peaks, here on Make It Make Sense, the podcast where we talk about anything, everything, unscripted, unedited, uncut, but unapologetic as well. Because what else are we supposed to do? Can't go around just censoring myself all day. But again, I haven't actually been that bad. So I will holler at you guys next time. Tune in. We're going to talk about some fun things. My next episode, I'm just going to put this out here. On next episode, we will discuss some things that are happening in today's world, this cancel culture. We're going to talk about how just there are some really thought-provoking things happening within the different communities that exist within this country. So we're going to touch bases on that stuff here next time on Make It Make Sense. Once again, I will holler at you guys on the flip side. Love you and good night.
Burn my damn finger.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
You remember when you was only 2 years old?
No.
You came into my life.
I don't.